Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Total Truth Show. And here on the Total Truth Show, we want to help you break free from the lies and propaganda of the mainstream media, all the disinformation and misinformation. We want to help you blast through all of that. And my name is Ken Kleinberg, coming to you all the way from the USA, San Diego, California.
And I'm Aldwyn Altuney, known as the Media Queen from the Gold Coast in Australia.
There is a great awakening happening in the world right now, and you're going to want to come along for the ride.
A lot of lies are coming to the surface. There's a lot of awakening happening, and as this awakening is happening, people realize they're being deceived for years. They've been lied to for years around all sorts of things. A lot of people have been blind to what has been going on in the world, and now they're starting to see. They're starting to see things in a different light.
Through our show, we want to raise global consciousness to quantum critical mass. And we don't want you just to accept the things that we're saying. That goes for our guests as well. We want you to do the research for yourself. Get out there and start questioning things. Start looking things up. Do the research. We want to pave the way for a new awakened world. And we want you to come along for the ride. So with that, let's get started, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. Once again, welcome.
Yes, welcome to Total Truth Show, episode 64. And we're going to chat today about the truth about subconscious parenting. And our very special guest we've got today, Ashley Kumar. A little bit about her before we get into the show. And of course, great to see you, my co-host, Ken Kleinberg, fact finder.
Good to see you as well.
Now, Ashley is a certified self-esteem and self-confidence for kids, certified master parenting coach, certified social, emotional, and ethical learning facilitator, a somatic trauma therapy practitioner, certified yoga instructor, an author, a speaker, and mother of two. Suicide, low self-worth, and distorted self-image dramatically impacted her childhood. Today, it all fuels her overarching vision in life to empower kids and their parents to develop sensational self-confidence, soaring self-esteem, and significant self-worth. And she's coached families from all over the world, coming to us from Alberta, Canada today. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. And for those wondering why my voice is sounding particularly sexy today, I just like to, just mention the elephant in the room. I've just got back from 2 weeks in Philippines, and I've come down with something. I've got some kind of bug, cold. So, I mean, thankfully, no one's going to catch anything through this show because it's online. However, I might sound a little bit different today. So bear with me if suddenly I sneeze or blow my nose or something like that. That could happen at any moment, right? And I'm also quite burnt because I did a few day trips out to the islands from Philippines and got quite frazzled. So I'm a little bit burnt as well and peeling. However, life goes on. The show must go on. And I'm incredibly curious now, Ashley, about your background, your childhood. You said suicide, low self-worth, and distorted self-image impacted you. Now, I'm very interested in that. So can you tell us a bit more about that background?
Okay, you want to start with the heavy stuff right away, huh?
Yeah, let's get straight.
You don't go gently. Okay. Well, so I was 8 months old. I grew up, I was born in Fiji. Fiji is a small island in the South Pacific Ocean, very tiny. It was a developing country at that time. I'm part of what they call the Indian diaspora. We were taken as what they call indentured laborers by the British colonial system, which basically is slavery. Let's just call it what it is. And they took us from different parts of India, and we landed in Fiji. So that's where I was born. So there's a whole bunch of trauma there that we already know about. Colonialism did its thing. My biological mother, I would say, was very young. She was 21. And I was 8 months old. So just a baby when she took her own life. When I was 10, I was then told that that's what happened. So at 10, I was quite shocked to find out, oh, who I thought was my mom is not my mom. So I was adopted. And then I was told when I was 10 that I was adopted. I was adopted within my own family system. So my biological mom is the youngest daughter in the family, and my adopted mom is the oldest daughter in the family. So I stayed in the family. I just happened to have to leave Fiji, which is where I was born, and starting to grow up. I came to Canada when I was 4 years old. But I didn't know any of the background until I was 10. And so that was very, very intense, very traumatic to find out that information, in particular, how she took her life and how young she was. She was 21 years old. I have a biological brother. We've both, unfortunately, we were taken from different families and moved around and that kind of thing. And obviously it plays an impact, right? So there's something called attachment science, which describes how infants need to have caregivers to take care of them. We're helpless babies. You can't get up and walk and feed yourself. And you look for the people you know. You start to look for your mother. Even when my son was born, he could smell me, right? Like he knew who was mom and who wasn't mom, right? So I have some attachment trauma there. And so me and my biological brother moved around quite a bit. And in my teens, I attempted twice as well. In the hospital 2 times. And back then, we know mental health has come a long way. But back then, it was a very, very tough time to have to go through, especially in an immigrant family, growing up in an immigrant family where they are trying to lay roots in a new country and try to create a reputation, I guess you could say, for themselves. To have a child go through that, that's traumatic for them on their own, in their own way. So that happened. So low self-worth, low self-image were all contributing factors to where I ended up. The thing is that, sometimes people want to chalk up, a mother has a baby, it's postpartum depression. It's postpartum depression, that's what it is. But I personally believe that it's not just one thing that tips a person into that thought that I'm going to take my own life, right? It's not just one thing. It's an accumulation over time of the various things that happened in that person's life or didn't happen, for example, neglect and things like that didn't happen, that then create that seed in that person's mind that it's better if I'm just not here. So that's tough. That's very, very hard. I actually don't know any, I know a lot of people. I'm trying to think if I know anyone who hasn't been touched by suicide in some way. So it's a pretty big deal. And I was young. I was a kid, right, when I attempted. My mother was 21, basically a kid too, also. So I went through a lot as a child. When I had my first child, my own child, all this stuff came up. And very unexpectedly, and I'm sure there's a lot of mothers out there who relate, but once you're holding your own child in your own hands, it's like a whole different level of responsibility that comes up. But if you're holding this child in your hand and you have a whole different level of responsibility, but you didn't heal any of your trauma or didn't have any support in healing that, that's asking you to heal. It's asking you to, hey, you're going to have to raise this kid and they're going to go through similar things you went through. What are you going to do? What's going to happen? How are you going to handle that? So that stuff was coming up for me when my first child was born. And that's when I remember being in the hospital. I'm like, wow, I need to there was this level of stuff that came up that is conviction in what I need to do to make sure this doesn't happen to my children, make sure I have a different parenting approach, and also to make sure that other kids out there who are experiencing this, whose parents don't understand what we're going to talk about today, that they also don't get left behind. Or, to lose one child to suicide is one too many. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's my background. That's heavy. Sorry, everyone. Boom, there you go.
Thank you for sharing that. That must have been so hard for you, and particularly then to find out that you were adopted. So it was like you were lied to as well. And obviously they were just protecting you, obviously, and wanting and not wanting you to worry, I guess. However, the truth always comes out in the end, right? Here we are on Total Truth Show, and the truth always comes out in the end. And suicide is such a huge thing now. I've had 4 friends who've suicided actually by the age of 45, and it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic when it happens, and sometimes it's people that you just would not have expected to do that. For me, my first brush with that was when I was 31, and a girlfriend, she was also 31, and she was the communications manager at the Gold Coast Airport, and she was the most bubbly, lovely, outgoing person. And then I found out that she killed herself. She hung herself one night, and on the surface, she seemed like the most together person. She seemed like she had it all together. She had a loving family. She had a lovely boyfriend. She had her own place. She had all these things going for her. Yet it was one dark moment. And that's the thing. It's one dark moment. That's all it takes for someone to want to end their life. And then since then, I've had 3 other friends, guys in their early 40s who've taken their own life as well. And they had depression. And depression, 1 in 3 people have depression. And now since COVID, we've had 4 times the suicide rates. There's normally 1 million people a year worldwide take their own lives. We've had 4 times that through COVID. And you can see why, because it's been absolute warfare. It's been emotional, psychological, physical warfare going on the last few years. And it's been interesting, coming back from the Philippines. There's so many people in the Philippines, they have so little. My driver, he lost everything in a fire. Like 2 years ago, he lost everything in a fire, and he was the most beautiful man. He had a 2-year-old child, a 2-year-old girl, and beautiful wife. And he took me to their place. He said the government have given them these shanties. They're kind of like these little. They've built this accommodation for them. There's not even a shower in where they are. It's like a tiny little room. He's got his wife, his 2-year-old daughter in there. They've got a toilet. There's like a squat toilet. And to shower, they get limited amount of water that they can shower. It's like these shanties are like sandwiched together. It's like rows of housing with just like a little box, right, with a little box with a window, and right next to them, all those like 2,000 people affected by this fire. And they shower by having a bucket of water, and they put water on themselves to shower. This is how people in the Philippines now are living. And they said, he said, we're very grateful. We've got a roof over our head. He's so grateful. And they said they're waiting for the government to come and build some showers or whatever. But in the meantime, they've been living like that for 1.5 years. Since this fire happened. And then, I get on a plane in Melbourne, and I look at these people there. There's this woman and this guy there, and they're miserable. They look like they've got everything. They're sitting in first class. They look like they have everything. They've got they're dressed to the nines, but on their faces is this misery, right? And I think to myself, people in Philippines, places like that, they have nearly nothing and they're happy. And so many people have everything and they're miserable, and I know this is a little bit off topic of what we're talking about here. However, these kind of things, really getting conscious to where our state of mind is at, I think is absolutely critical to how we do life. And those who get depressed and those who suicide, a lot of them are in first world countries. It's phenomenal, the amount of youth suicide and things that happen in America and Australia. It's absolutely tragic. They have everything in front of them, and yet they're miserable and they're not enjoying their life. And I think a lot of it comes down to what is it that you really love to do, and how can you do more of that? Bob Proctor talked about this in his YouTube video. At 84 years of age, he talks about this. He talks about, how do you find your purpose? Love what you do and do as much as you can every single day of what you love to do, because hurt people, and hurt people hurt themselves. Hurt people hurt themselves. And this is the thing, is that, it's so easy to live in drama, because this is how we have been conditioned, particularly in first world countries. We have been conditioned to live in drama. Now, we're talking about subconscious parenting here today. Now, I think this is relevant to get conscious to where we're not conscious, right? Or where we haven't been conscious on how we actually do life, because how you do life is how you will turn up as a parent too. What are your thoughts around that with conscious versus subconscious parenting, Ashley?
Well, I think it's critical to understand on the scientific aspect of it that your conscious mind is only 5 to 10% of your mind power, and your subconscious mind is 90 to 95% of your mind power. So which one's bigger? Which one has more power? Obviously your subconscious mind. But how do you understand your subconscious mind? It's when we say subconscious, we mean beneath our awareness. We don't know that certain programs are running and playing in the background. We're just kind of going through it, and we don't realize that these programs might be running. The conscious mind is only 5 to 10%. So what you do with the 5 to 10% is critical. That's why I call it conscious parenting. Some people like to call it gentle parenting. Some people like to call it respectful parenting. But gentle and respectful are subjective terms, right? But we know that your conscious mind is a real thing and that there's a whole piece to that, right? So what you do with that 5 to 10% really matters. How are you going to show up? How are you going to then use your conscious mind to discover what your subconscious patterns are that are then impacting your parenting and how you show up as a human being, right? Every day.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about, these people have everything, and it would look the same to me as well. When you looked in from the outside, that's the key to an onlooker. She's got a family. She left Fiji. She left a developing country. What's her problem? What's the big deal? But there's a level of judgment there that you don't know everybody's story. Now, here's the key to me. The key is material wealth, even though you can see what you can physically and tangibly see, material wealth, material stuff you can touch, even humans you can see. You got mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever, cousins. But you can't see emotions. Emotional wealth and material wealth are completely different things. So how you are doing in terms of your emotional wealth or abundance or whatever word you want to call it is nobody can see that. No, it's not tangible. Yeah. And so it's very difficult for us to when I hear people say, they had everything. Why would they do that? It's we don't see what's happening beneath the surface. So that's really, really key. And that's something that I coach parents on is as a parent, we respond to behaviors. We respond to what you see, the result, the consequence, the behavior. But you've got to look under the surface if you really want to understand what's going on for somebody. The problem and the challenge is that many of us didn't grow up with support networks where that could happen. Where that could happen in a acceptable, non-stigmatized way, where we could peel away the layers and talk about thoughts and feelings and what's going on for you and what was your experience like without fear of judgment. So that's really, really key. You're not gonna, it doesn't matter how much material wealth you have, if you're suffering internally because of whatever conditioning or programming you grew up with, however you were parented, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a struggle. So that's really, really key, that when we look at somebody who might be considering suicide or has taken their own life, what was the hurt that they were going through? What was it that they were experiencing? Obviously, there was something that was going on for them that nobody else could see, and they didn't feel safe enough to share with somebody to say, hey, this is what's going on for me. And mental health has come a long way, but obviously, as you can see from statistics, there is a lot of work to do still. To see young kids still, the numbers are going up, not down, right? So there's a lot of work still to be done. And that's why I do what I do as a parent and a parenting coach, for us to peel away those layers and for parents to learn how to become the safe place for those layers to actually peel away. What's happening in a lot of parenting dynamics is it's going the opposite way. Instead of parents becoming a safe place because of harsh parenting styles, they're becoming this place, well, I'm not going to share anything with mom and dad because, I might get reprimanded for it. I got to hide this from them. Who am I going to talk to? Am I even allowed to talk to anybody about this? So when I was growing up, I was always told this was a very strong message don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. This was often shared and don't tell anyone what's going on in our family. Don't tell anyone what's going on with you if you're struggling with stuff. So I actually grew up in friendship systems where I didn't talk much. I was a very, and a lot of people will attest to this. Ashley was such a quiet, good, well-behaved girl, well-behaved, quiet, good girl. So polite, so this, because I didn't talk to people. I didn't share what was going on for me. I wasn't as bold and loud as I am today. But that was there. That was part of my conditioning. That was part of my programming. And it took 20 years to undo that programming. So that's what's happening behind the scenes, that subconscious and conscious, we have to know how our mind works. Then we have to use that 10% to figure out how the other 95% is working, find out what patterns and beliefs and default ways we have of being and showing up, and even the way we speak, even the way we talk about ourselves in front of our children. How is that affecting them? How is that impacting them? And many people are unaware. They're really unaware of what's running the show. And then they're coming and I'm part of different Facebook parenting groups. My kid is doing this and my kid is doing that, and I don't know how to get them to stop doing this. Or my kid has stopped sharing with me. They've closed up. They don't want to talk. They're shut themselves in their room, and I don't know how to get through to them. Stuff like that's happening. So it's all part and parcel of the package. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
that and more.
Yeah, that was very good. Yeah, what about you, Ken? What are your thoughts about this?
So, I mean, there's a couple things that I was just like, we have interviewed somebody on our show. Her name is Anna Berger. She's a subconscious specialist, and she does a lot of really extreme deep work and helps you to be able to reprogram your subconscious mind and go in there and kind of like reset everything. And so both Aldwyn and I have done some work with her. But when we talk about how the conscious mind is like 5 to 10%, the subconscious is the rest, I always remember an illustration Anna gave at the time between the subconscious and the conscious mind. The conscious mind literally is like, picture this guy on a bike, all right? And the subconscious mind is a big giant freight train. So you are determined to get from point A to point B with the guy on the bike. Hey, I have these goals. I want to get here. I want to do this. I have these dreams and da-da-da. And somewhere in your childhood, between the ages of 0 to 7, you were programmed that whatever X, Y, and Z, that's actually unsafe. Mm-hmm. And so you go in that direction and you're pedaling as hard as you can. But eventually what's going to happen is that freight train is going to snap you back, because the subconscious mind feels that that's unsafe. You can apply the same principle to like making money. If the subconscious mind is convinced that making money for you is unsafe, then the subconscious mind, it doesn't matter how hard you pedal that bike, is going to snap you back every single time. And it's like, that's always been a very powerful illustration for me. And the other thing that I thought it was interesting, so growing up, in general, we're taught to be nice, and we're, and different things like that. But, it's interesting. I was on a little conference call this morning, or actually it was a replay from last week. And because I missed that one, I did catch the one for this week though. But in that replay, it was shared by the person leading it. We are not called to be nice. Nice is not a fruit of the Spirit, if you will. Kindness, gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit, but not nice. Nice is actually a control word. You need to be nice. No, I need to be bold, strong, kind, gentle, self-controlled, and patient. Not nice. So those are the two things that I'll speak to there. What are your thoughts on that, Ashley?
Well, I think nice it's an adjective. It's something to describe something. And I think these words are all subjective, and they're also labels in a sense.
Mhm.
And I always come down to the idea of how do you feel? What are the emotions you're experiencing, and what do you need in a certain situation? So feelings and needs underlie, a lot of the things I talk about. So if you're being nice, but you're not feeling happy or healthy or successful, or you're not feeling heard,
Mm,
you're not feeling understood, then what good is being nice going to bring you? Right? You're
that's true
being
as well.
nice because you might have been conditioned to please others, because being
Yes.
nice is pleasing for people. And a lot of children are being conditioned that way. Well, that's not nice. Your mom or dad might have said when you were little, and that's not a nice thing to do. So we learn what is nice and what is not nice. And typically they are things that please other people. In particular, how we were raised is we heard it from our parents, what was nice and what was not nice. Depending on how often you heard it and how critical your parents were of different things and different actions you did, um, because it's a label, you would have attached that at some point to yourself, that I'm not nice, or I am nice, or I need to be nice to be liked, or I need to be nice to be approved of. And the same thing happens to kids today, because a lot of the way we speak still is still like that. So
We're
instead of
more worried about pleasing people, like you said. I find that's a very, very powerful distinction that you made there as well. And I find it also interesting. What also correlates to that, though, is you had to relearn over the years that it's not necessarily about that, because another word you use that you have become now is more bold.
oh yeah,
And that's, I think, our calling. We are all called to be creators. We are all called to speak our truth and to be bold about it, but also to be gentle and to have patience as well. But boldness is even something even recently in the last year or two that I've really started to latch onto, because I've got a truth that I want to share. One of my passions is exposing the lies of the health and wellness and food industry out there, and the lies and deception that we've all been sold for so many years, and to tell the truth on that. And that is my calling, to share my truth and to be bold about it. And what's interesting about that is that hasn't necessarily been an easy journey. Why? Because I recognize that program that's inside of me, that program that wants to please people. I'm afraid of, there's times where I'm afraid of what people are going to think, or da da da. And I'm slowly but surely ridding myself of those chains, if you will, and working my way through that and becoming more and more outspoken and bold about the truth that I have to share.
that's something I work on with kids, because we weren't taught when we were
Yeah.
kids. So what I hear you saying is, you're learning to rid yourself slowly but surely of the fear of judgment, the fear of
Yes.
what other people think.
Absolutely.
And I literally work on that with children, to understand, first of all, what is judgment, what is doubt, what is fear in and of itself. A lot of kids are not actually on a cognitive level taught what these mean. What are these things explicitly, and how do they affect your social, emotional, mental world,
Mm.
right? And so I actually work on those specific topics with children as young as my kids. My kids are 5 and 8, and I've been working and coaching them since they were 2. And so they know a lot more of these terms than I ever knew when I was a
Mm.
child, because nobody sat down to talk about it, and it wasn't a part of our regular daily life as I was growing up. Our parents didn't know how to explain those words. And even parents today don't know how to necessarily explain those words. But I'm able to do that using some of the curricula that I have in a very childlike way to help them understand. And kids learn a lot through
Awesome.
imagery. They learn through imagery, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what books and movies are all about. It's all about imagery. So I use stories to help illustrate this to children, to help them understand. Because I don't know if I don't know if the listeners know what neural pathways are, but neural pathways are these things in our mind, they're kind of like roads on a map, right? The more you travel that road, the more grooves it has, that road. So neural pathways, we have them for everything. We have them for everything. Everything we experience, from talking, walking, speaking, language, but also thoughts. A thought repeated can become a strong neural pathway or a neural circuit in the brain. When a thought's repeated many, many times, it becomes a thought habit. So it becomes a habit and you don't know, and it becomes subconscious. You don't even realize you said something that was self-deprecating or negative self-talk.
This is how people get food addictions, is because they keep going back to the same thing, and then it develops that rutted road. And now they're stuck in this loop of constantly eating that stuff. Yeah.
And so if you think about, if you're driving a road over and over again, that groove gets stronger or more noticeable, right? We call it a strong neural pathway in the brain. Now, if you went for 25 years of your life doing something a certain way, which is fearing judgment from others, and that groove, that road has gotten really worn in, really, really worn in. And now you're 25 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, now trying to slowly release the hold that the fear of judgment has had on you. That is tough. I'm not saying it's impossible. We know the brain is plastic, neuroplasticity, but it's harder. Okay. But if you can start with younger kids, which is the kind of work I do, right? I coach kids as young as age 5 to help them understand what is judgment, what is the fear of judgment, what is self-doubt. They're big concepts, but there's ways to talk with kids about this. Then I'm starting to build those neural pathways now for recognizing, hey, I think I'm right now fearing what they're going to think about me or what they're going to say. And I maybe need to just focus on what I need right now. What I say about myself is more important than what anybody else says to me right now. And the more we practice those concepts, the stronger those neural pathways become, right? And that's where the parenting part comes in. Are parents modeling the stuff that I'm teaching their kids? Are they modeling that? Are they, using those habits and those words and those concepts in their home daily? So that's a really important piece. If we want resilient kids, resilient adults, let's say, go back to self-worth, suicide and all. If we want resilient adults, we need to start building resilient children from a young age.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
110% agree with that. That's so powerful.
We've got Vanessa here. Hello, Vanessa. Vanessa Bush is going to be one of our future guests on this show coming on. She's saying, incredible. Yes, help the kids while they are still young. Absolutely. She also says absorb more with repetition. Yes, we do absorb more with repetition, and be conscious of what are the stories we're telling ourselves as well. And yes, boldness is a good strength. And I think the whole thing around the nice conversation is very interesting because it's interesting to get conscious that that's not a nice thing to do. Being nasty to someone else is not a nice thing to do. And yet often people are not nice to themselves, with what they're actually telling themselves either, yet we're conditioned to, be nice to others and to be people pleasers. Whereas actually, if you make time for yourself to get a massage or something, it could be self-indulgent, could be seen as self-indulgent, it could be like, oh, what are you doing that for when there's others that need help, others that need saving, there's, whatever. Right. And that was definitely strong in our family. There was definitely a lot of nice conditioning and treating others with respect, etc. And then I think back and, our family, there's many times that we got ripped off or we got abused or we got taken advantage of because we were too nice, and it's been a real learning or an unlearning to sort of, to actually look at, well, what do I need right now, actually? And it's okay to have some time out and do what I need for me to fill my cup up so that I can help others with the overflow. And right now I know my body is telling me to rest, right? However, I didn't want to let you guys down. Like my body, I just wanted today to just stay in bed. But I thought, no, I've committed to this. I'm going to show up, even if I, take myself off screen to blow my nose a few times, whatever it is. Like, I've shown up. And so sometimes I think you've got to pick your battles. Whereas I was due to be interviewed on somebody else's podcast today. And I called them and I said, look, I don't want to let you down. However, this is a situation. I'm really not in a great state. And they said, oh, gosh, you sound terrible. And they said, well, let's put it off till that wasn't great neural wiring. However, you said terrible. And I said, well, so we put it off till Monday now. But, there's like as much as possible today, I'm going to, whatever I can shift, to listen to my body. My body's telling me to rest. It's been intense 2 weeks. And for me, I often find when I get on aeroplanes, when I'm in air conditioning, often you can just pick things up, because those aeroplanes, there's hundreds of people on them. And it's that constant, there's no fresh air coming through the place. So often,
but yet they're HEPA filters are supposed to filter everything out.
Right. And then the Asian planes, they spray all these chemicals and God knows what stuff's through the planes as well, which is probably makes it even worse. But anyway, we won't go down there right now. But I'd love to hear from people watching this. I can see we've got quite a few people on Instagram here. We've got Gail Glasner, Natalie King, good to see you. We've got Jeff Zeffirino, Tinson. We've got Marley Nows, hello, joining us on Instagram. And if you're watching also Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, wherever you're watching right now, please let us know. Do you have any questions for Ashley around subconscious parenting, or about maybe how you could, you're having a challenge right now with parenting a child at the moment, and it could be an older child too, right? It could be any age child, because once you're a baby, you're always going to be the baby in some way, right? You're always known as the child, even when you get older, you're always going to be that parent's baby, really. So any sort of challenges with that? We did mention Ken and I are both single, and we have cats, and I must say my cat is very low maintenance, and he's fantastic, so I love parenting my cat, because most of the time he does do what I ask for. Most of the time he does play nice. He does, every now and then he'll get a little bit scratchy, but most of the time he's very loving. And I think there's actually a lot we can learn from fur baby animals, from our animal babies. I think there's a lot we can learn. And I know, Ken, yours is probably a little bit spoiled, you were saying. Yours is a little bit spoiled.
Mine can be low maintenance when he wants to be. Otherwise, he's very high maintenance, meaning he wants my attention at all times. He knows when I've got a busy day. He knows when I'm getting ready to head out the door. And I don't mean just the normal stuff. I mean, there are literally times where he will do things that delay me from going out the door on purpose. Like he'll come around my leg and wipe up against it. And then when I don't pay attention to that, then he turns around and bites me because I'm not paying attention to him. That's more of a love bite. Yeah.
What's really interesting, what you just said, is there are parents who say the same thing about their kids.
It's so crazy. Now, here, I did have a question for you around that, kind of a deeper question. So, when you told me that, worrying about what other people are thinking of you, worrying about how other people are judging you, you were saying how that's what you do with kids. Now, I am curious, because I know I'm 48 and I still struggle with some of these things. So how do you deal with the parents that obviously are also struggling with the same thing that the kids are? How do you then parent the parents? That's another question I would have.
So my job is not to parent the parents. My job is for the parent to understand where this pattern evolved from, and to recognize when it's showing up. So many times, in a coaching session, a parent might inadvertently say something like, "Oh, I look horrible, my hair is this," or whatever, and they might make these comments. And it's not for me to address that in the moment. That's coming up for them. Let it come up. When we start getting into our session is where I can then safely bring that up to somebody and say, "Hey, did you notice that you happened to say this in the beginning?" And then we get to explore the layers of where these matters or patterns come from. And they're often rooted in childhood, but then we also have media and all that stuff that impacts how we perceive ourselves in comparison to others. So there's a lot of things that in the moment when we're with our children, we're not necessarily conscious of and aware that they're impacting how we're showing up in that moment. And so my job is sort of to be a mirror, a reflection back to the parent for them to see themselves in a light that they might not have been able to see before. But doing that in a very safe, brave, and empathic way. And it's not judgmental because it's meant to be, it's for everybody. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. We've all said something about ourselves that we dislike, disapproved of. We've all judged ourselves. We all fear judgment in some ways of other people. What levels we have that fear of is different person to person, right? So if I'm coaching a child and helping them understand the fear of judgment while the parent is modeling fear of judgment regularly in their day-to-day parenting, this is why I coach parents and children in tandem, for them to recognize, hey, did you realize that your child said this? Oh, wow. Where did that come from? So there's me right there. I'm going to hold up a mirror for you gently, parent. I want you to notice what was in this mirror that I'm holding up. And then this is where parents have this sort of like, oh my gosh, they learned it from me. They got it from me. And it's not a judgment. It's not a like, oh, I'm a failure as a parent that I did that. Okay. It's what that parent knew. It's what they were conditioned and programmed with from their own upbringing.
Yes.
So it's nobody's fault. And I never want a parent to feel like, oh my God, it's my fault. No, it's actually not. As a parent, you're probably, I'm gonna guess that most people watching the show right now who are interested in this topic, you're probably trying your best, right? And that's a label too. That's an evaluation. Yes. You're probably trying your best. You're probably trying as much as you can. Now it's whether or not you have the tools and strategies and information to make it healthier in terms of your parenting dynamics at home. But it's nobody's fault that we happen to have those patterns. I remember coaching this 10-year-old girl who was she was 10, right? And I was coaching her we had gone in for several sessions now, about 8 sessions in, and then we started talking about neural pathways. And oh yeah, you know how you have, and I was explaining to her, just naturally conversing with her. And neural pathways are kind of like habits. The more you do something, the stronger the habit becomes. It's like when you brush your teeth. You don't really have to think about it, right? I don't brush my teeth. My mom does it for me. Oh, okay. So I kind of let that settle. And then I said, well, it's also kind of like washing your hair. You know, you do it. You've done it so many times. You know how to wash it. You know how to put the shampoo in and wash it out. You have a strong neural circuit for that. It's a habit.
I know where this is going. Keep going.
I don't wash my own hair. My mom washes my hair. And I said, oh, really? And I remember I'm showing you my in the session, I was very neutral, but I'm showing you what was happening inside of me.
Right.
So what you're seeing on my face is what was happening inside of me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then I didn't ask any more questions. She just said, my mom thinks I don't do it good enough.
Oh my gosh.
But the way it came out for the child was very like, my mom thinks I don't do it good enough. Like it was just matter of fact.
Wow.
So hear what I said. I said matter of fact.
Yeah.
That child has learned that they don't do those mundane basic tasks of self-care.
They have no clue how detrimental it's going to be later in the years. They don't even know. They're in an innocent, neutral stage.
They're just observing.
And they think that this is normal.
So that happened, and we left it there. It's not my job to change anything there. It was my job to continue coaching her on what I was coaching her at the time. Later, when I had the session with the parents, so this is why I coach parents and children together, so we can make these dots, connect the dots. I had a conversation with the mom, and I had explained that these are some of the challenges the child was going through, bullying. And when I say bullying, I mean she was part of friends groups, friends circles, or cliques, you could say, that were perpetuating bullying. So they were kind of bullying her into being a bully at that time. And she had she didn't have the assertiveness to speak up for herself or to really discern which path she wanted to take. Go do what the friends are doing or break those friendships or kind of leave them and go do what I feel is right for me. Right. She wasn't aware and she was struggling with that. Plus, they were saying things about her. But the girl kind of just took it in stride. She didn't show, like we were talking about Aldwyn earlier, she didn't show any signs of visible distress. You know, even in our sessions, very, very pleasant girl to be with, to coach, very ready to learn, very ready to absorb, very smiling, very, you know, very calm and centered girl. But obviously, things we don't see under that iceberg. Okay. So when I brought this up for the parent and I said, this is what happened, she's going through all these things, but she also doesn't feel like she's good enough, even at certain basic things. And I need to tell you what happened today. And I always get consent from the child. Can I share what you just said with me, with mom and dad? And they'll say yes or no. So I shared. And the mom, you could visibly see, she was like, oh, this light bulbs went off in her brain. I was like, oh my gosh, I have been saying that to her. I have been criticizing the way she brushes her teeth or her hair or washes her hair. And I have literally said, she's not doing it good enough. So the child at her young age, so I don't know if, again, the audience listeners know this, but the child brain doesn't fully mature until age 25 plus. And the last part of the brain to mature is the prefrontal cortex, where the executive functioning or the logical, rational part of the brain lives. Okay. Until then, the emotional brain is the part of the brain that's the most active in children. And so what they're absorbing, what they're taking in, they're just processing it. They're not necessarily saying, hey, mom said I'm not good enough at washing my hair, but that still means I'm a good enough person. They're not doing that. That's not happening. They're just going, oh, not good enough. Ding.
Not good enough. Yep.
Not good enough. Ding. Not good enough. Ding. And how many times they might be hearing not good enough, we don't know. And in what ways and what words are being used. I also know that school systems do similar stuff happens in school systems, right? With grades and grading and comparing grades and posting grades and all those things. And kids are learning to compare themselves. It's part of the system of how we live, but it can be very detrimental to self-esteem, self-worth, self-concept. And so it's really key that parents understand these pieces. So this mom had this experience where she was kind of like, wow, I need to shift that. I need to make sure we give her chances. So we talked about, helping her feel competent. How can you help her feel competent and let go of the idea that it needs to be done a certain way or to a certain standard? Because she's still growing. She's 10. She's not 40. She might not be able to wash her hair perfectly. There might be a little soap in there. Is that really what matters more, the soap in her hair or her self-esteem?
Yeah, interesting. And the mother is probably not conscious that she has some perfectionism streak, and that maybe when she was growing up, maybe her parents criticized her that she wasn't doing it well enough, because often it comes right down the way, right? And so until you break that pattern, it just carries on to the next generation.
So what I was
conscious, yeah.
What I was able to do is bring that to her conscious awareness. Now that she was consciously aware of that, now she can make a choice. Am I going to continue saying that? Or if I hear myself say that, will I catch it? Will I shift it? Will I change it? Will I apologize and say, wait, hold on. That wasn't the right set of words. Let me try that again. Is that going to happen? So once you're aware, then you have a choice. But it's the help that we need, the support systems we need to become consciously aware of subconscious patterns.
Yes.
What's interesting too. So you had mentioned the school system, and what's going on in school also has stuff to do about that too. And I remember in my childhood, the school systems that I was a part of. And I do remember my parents fighting for me through some of those school systems and different things like that. That did happen. I was, as a kid, legitimately. So, I mean, I'm saying this legitimately because a lot of people use this term nowadays as just, oh, I'm ADHD. Oh, this. And no. I was legitimately ADHD. I was on Ritalin for a while and all this other stuff. I went through that at a time where the school systems and teachers, they had no clue how to deal with ADHD children. So I remember as a child, I was always feeling like I was being shoved in different classrooms. I was shoved in a handicapped classroom. I was shoved in a classroom with mentally retarded kids. I was shoved in like all these different places. And some of the teachers that were head of teaching and whatever of that class and whatever weren't so pleasurable either. My mom says there's one teacher that came at me with a broom. I don't even know if I remember that, but yeah, just to give you an idea. And so, yeah, I look at that, and thankfully, because of a lot of the deeper work that I've done over the last year or two, and people that I've been introduced to and met, and just kind of like really kind of looked at this and worked through it, a lot of it makes a lot more sense to me now with some of the things that I am trying to struggle through and make better. Like, for example, the whole people pleasing thing, the whole like not worrying about what other people are thinking of me, the whole standing in myself, my boldness, my truth, and being proud of that and not, not caring. I mean, being polite, being generous, yes, but, standing in that. And I definitely see marked improvement, but I just found it interesting when you mentioned the school system, because that kind of like brought back all that in my mind. I remember all of that. And then I was made fun of a lot in schooling and different things like that. All that took place. So it's funny. It's interesting.
Vanessa's just saying about that. I hate that they were so ignorant. And back then, people didn't really understand, ADHD.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like every entrepreneur's ADHD, just about. I've been diagnosed ADHD, and maybe it was from all this stuff in school, like all this, like you got to do this, you got to do that. We all just rebelled and went, "Stuff, what we're going to do it our way."
The ADHD that's coming up for most people nowadays, that's just because of this. How can I put this? Real mentality that's going on. You got people stuck on their phone, flipping through reel after reel after reel after reel after reel. And what's that doing to them psychologically is dopamine. And it's kind of dumbing down people to where you've got less of an attention span than you did before. And so that's kind of what's raising up in even entrepreneurs and today. And I've even gone as far as, now when I'm focusing in and doing work and different things like that, if I don't have my phone across the room and away from me, if I get stuck on something, and here's when I notice it, it's always a trigger point. When I get stuck on something, or I can't think of the right words to type, or whatever it is, a technical difficulty, instead of sitting there and dealing with it and going through, if my phone is right here, I will pick up my phone and distract. It's a coping mechanism. I will distract myself from it. And I'm learning to not do that anymore. Have I mastered it? Hell no. Am I getting better? Yes. But that's what I'll say with today's most ADHD stuff.
It's interesting you brought up coping mechanism.
Yes.
That's actually one of my gifts that I want to give out to people today if they're interested in. Coping skills is a real thing that most of us were not explicitly taught. And our parents didn't have those tools and skills. So when you're talking about coping mechanism, can I differentiate between a coping tool and coping skill and a coping mechanism? And I think you clearly defined what it was, which was clearly a coping mechanism. And I think people need to understand the difference. A skill is something you work on, a mechanism, something you default to, something you just pick up. And it might be a habitual pattern. It might be a distraction pattern. Okay, I just need something to distract me from this particular thing that I'm distressed about. So coping skills, when we were growing up, never heard of it, right? In schools. And so now we have all these parents with children. I'm one of those people, right? Now we have all those parents out there trying to raise children, or what we want to call resilient children, but they didn't have coping skills to deal with their own stuff, right? They might have had coping mechanisms. They might have had, what you talked about, food addiction. Now we have screen addiction, all kinds of things that can become a coping mechanism. And That's primarily because many of us were not taught what coping skills are. It's changing slowly in schools now, which is great, except that we still have parents out there who don't know what coping skills are and how to develop them, right? And how to actually implement them and use them in front of your children boldly and vulnerably, because if you've not used it before, it's going to feel weird and funky, and you've never, taken deep breaths or done a meditation or traced your fingers or done any type of sensory input that is calming for your nervous system, then it's going to feel a little weird. It's going to feel a little funky, especially if you're a parent and you're trying to model this to your child. It's going to feel weird until you do it enough times that it becomes a neural pathway, and over time becomes a habit, and over time becomes a skill that you then are able to pass on to your children. But because we were not taught, a lot of parents that I work with today don't use them. They don't have coping tools to develop coping skills, and they have become, because of having a lack of these tools and strategies in place, reactive parents. I was one too. Reactive parent. And if I don't have a tool nearby, or if I lose my rational thinking and I've gone way into my deeply activated emotional brain, I don't have those coping skills either, because they were not my default from when I was a young kid. So thankfully, the work that I do is I actually help parents do this, build coping skills, to implement coping tools. But not only that, I work with the kids to understand what coping tools are and coping skills are and how to implement them over time. So there's two things that I want to give away to the audience today, if they're here, that they can access.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds amazing. I can see one link here. Could you just share? And we have people that tune in on the podcast afterwards, just on audio too. So if you could spell out the link as well, that would be great.
Oh, okay. Well, it's my full name, Ashley Angeline Kumar, which I don't know, is it showing on the screen?
Yeah, it's up on the screen.
www.ashleyangelinekumar.net/coping-skills. Okay, that's where you can get a free guide, and it's easy to, simple to download, and you'll get it right into your inbox. And then I have a very affordable course for parents, which I'll just pop in here, that they can get in helping understand how to implement something like this for their children from as young as age 2, which is how old my kids were when I implemented this, to as old as 15 or 16, depending on how open your teenager is. And it's called Building an Emotional Regulation Station in Your Home, and building one that actually works. So it's a very affordable course that they can get if they'd like to. Yes.
Beautiful. And there it is there. So we've got the link. So if you could just spell out your name, because people on the audio won't be able to see that name as well. So if you could just spell that one out.
Ashley, Ashley, Angeline, Anjlien. My last name, Kumar, KUMAR.net. And then /regulation station -parent course.
Beautiful.
So they can get that. It's very affordable, because I want this material to be available to people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And that's beautiful. I know Ken just ran to the bathroom, so we come in and out of this live stream and work with it. I can see a whole lot more people have joined us on Instagram as well. We've got Dortech there, Chloe Magic, good to see you. Gail Glasner here says thanks for your sharing. We've got Adam Dean Magic. We've got Moshio Rahat there, and Gail Glasner says she's a hypnotherapist who founded the Reprogram Your Subconscious Mind theory. She's an author of a best-selling book for many years called Gail Glasner. And she has a quick way also to help a child get over something bad that they experienced. Now, the quick way to get over things is what my parents did with me, is they actually use discipline. My parents use discipline. And I always say we should bring the cane back. Now, I know this is going to get a few people talking out there about, discipline. However, I tell you what, my parents had little things like they would give us hot chili. We'd put hot chili in our mouths if we, did something that was not good. And, it actually did stop us from doing more things that could get us into trouble. And having the cane at school, in our North Bagala Primary School, we had the cane there. And I remember being so scared of the cane that I never did anything to, to put myself in any jeopardy of possibly getting the cane, even though the cane was there. And I do believe that the crime rates back then were a lot less than they are now. As now literally kids are getting away with murder out there. They are just getting let off the hook for all sorts of bad behavior. And so now that's the other extreme. Now it'd be great to have, lots of love go out to people that are really not in a good state. However, really, I think there needs to be certain repercussions of certain actions. If someone's going to go out and harm an animal or another person, there needs to be some repercussion for that action. Otherwise, it's just going to keep on happening. So what are your thoughts around, subconscious parenting for kids that, that need a bit more discipline, I think?
Well, I'm in a very oppositional state, I'll say, to that. I want to just pose this question to anybody who was hit. I was hit as well. Your fear that came up might have served you in that time frame. In that time frame, it might have served you. I won't do that again because I'll get the cane, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But your fear also made you a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
I agree with that.
Well, there you go. That's interesting.
When I look back at those times, I never had a really good relationship with my dad, but he was usually the one that gave me spankings. Every once in a while, my mom. But I remember later in the years, there was a very rebellious, very, very rebellious, deep feeling in my heart because of that. And plus, I think it was also because of the fact of I never really had a relationship with my dad. And when my mom got her divorce a few years ago, I literally severed the ties in my own heart towards him. I was like, you're not my dad. Long story with that. But even now, as I look back on those times, I don't see discipline. I see a very rebellious spirit and result of that. Like, I resented him for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting.
What's interesting, though, Aldwyn, I heard you say that there's people committing crimes and hurting animals and other people, but then we're giving them the cane. So what are you teaching them? Aren't you teaching them violence aren't you perpetuating violence by teaching them violence?
Oh, no, these ones aren't getting the cane. These are the young ones today. These are the ones, we haven't had the cane here. The cane's been outlawed out of Australia for years. Oh. So we haven't had the cane here now for years. And so now we've got gangs of youth literally on the Gold Coast that are going around and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, right? So that's what's going on now, and probably in America too. Well, I mean, we just had,
you take away the cane. You take away the cane. What the hell did you replace it with? If you replaced it with nothing, this is going to happen. 100% this is going to happen because you didn't replace it. Did you put something else in place to discipline? Did you put something else in place of that type of punishment? Because being hit and being abused is technically assault and punishment. But was there something else in place? Was there something that was effective in supporting those children so that they don't end up going out there?
They replaced, actually in primary school, what they started to do is that, kids would have to pick up rubbish and things like that, or they'd put them in detention as far as they couldn't go out, or they couldn't, whatever it was back there. There was like some sort of, had to stay grounded in some way, couldn't go out to do something. So they limited the freedoms in some way, or pick up some rubbish, but, it just didn't seem to quite have the same impact as having the
fear. So when I work as a conscious parenting professional, it's we understand the science behind why punishing children, any kind of punishment, ends up playing out negatively down the road. And it will always 100% statistically do that. Even if someone claims to say, hey, I was hit and I turned out fine, I can guarantee you're not fine in some aspect of your life inside of your mind body system. Because when you're getting physical punishment, your nervous system is activated because your human body, your human system is built to survive. Okay. When your amygdala, which is an organ inside of your brain, detects threat, and if it's your parent that's doing that, okay, it's going to associate parent and threat, okay, together. Those neural pathways that are going to fire are going to fire and wire together. Parent, threat. Okay. Do you think that that's going to create children who then are open enough to talk to their parents about stuff? Probably not. Is it going to create connected family systems? Probably not. Is it going to create, hey, mom just texted me, no thanks. So mom just called me, no thanks. When they're 30 or 40, are they going to want to come to that person's house when their system has put those neural pathways together that my parent is a threat to me? And we know that that's the conditioning, the subconscious conditioning. So why do people have a fear of authority? They were fearful. Mom and dad were 30. They had a cane. Why were people fearful of the police? They were people in authority, but it was rooted in fear, not rooted in let's go out there and change the world and make a better place. It was rooted in fear. That's why you might be seeing the crime statistics go like that. So what else was in place? Punishment. You're just switching out another punishment for another punishment. Is that really effective? What else were those children needing? And that is the work that I do to help parents understand what are the needs that went unseen, were not met, and then resulted in these behaviors that you're now seeing. It's always about looking under the iceberg. All you see is the behavior. If you're always reacting to the behavior, you're a reactive person.
You just see the tip of the iceberg
you
at that
only
point.
see the tip of the iceberg. You're not seeing what's going on underneath. Every behavior is communication. Every behavior is a form of communication. Every negative behavior is a communication of an unmet need. So what's that need? You have to go down and you have to determine what's going on for that child. The younger your child, the harder it is. Doesn't mean it gets easier when you're a teenager. Because if you didn't learn how to express yourself when you were a child, you're going to have a lot of trouble as a teenager expressing yourself, right? Because it might not have been safe enough to say what you felt or to cry or to do whatever, express yourself as a child. Then how is it going to feel safe when you're a teenager? So in terms of this idea that we need to bring back the cane, I know, and statistically, and the science shows it, that does not work long term. It does not work long term. You're going to continue to see people with mental challenges. We're going to continue to see people with emotional challenges. You're going to continue to see people with addictions. You might not see, like you're saying, fear. If fear is driving the road, if fear is driving the car, right? You might not see as much crime as you're saying, okay? But you're going to see other things. So simply saying that, hey, let's bring back the cane, we got to understand what is the long-term impact of that. I was hit and I was abused, and I know a lot of people that were hit and abused. It did not make me a resilient person. It did not make me a strong person. It made me believe I was unworthy. It made me believe that I can't do anything right. Sorry, I'm getting a bit passionate here, but I can't do anything right because I'm going to get the spoon, or I'm going to get the belt, or I'm going to get the blah, blah, blah. That must mean I can't do anything right. What is it that I can freaking do right? Obviously nothing, right? And then you have that child growing into a teenager who now has really strengthened those neural pathways for not feeling good enough or right enough or correct enough or nice enough, who now wants to take their own life. So
I get what you're saying there, and I love your passion, and I'm sure there's people equally as passionate that are watching this and going, "Good on you, Ashley. That's exactly right. We don't bring the cane back. No, you don't. You don't deal with this by hitting people. No, that's not the way to go." Right? So, and I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. And in fact, I ended up actually hating my parents for quite a while there, and I actually also shut down. I didn't feel I could talk to my parents about stuff, and really when I look back, my parents did the best they could with what they knew, but it wasn't until many years later that I actually did the personal development work. I actually did a landmark course back in my 30s that I actually opened up at something that traumatized me when I was 6 that I'd blocked out of my memory, which is when I saw a sheep that I befriended in Turkey get its throat cut in front of me. I totally blocked this memory out, and I was able to have a conversation with my parents for the first time, and I actually realized for a long time I hated my parents. And And, Dad used to hit me at times for discipline, there was discipline, and I understood it. However, yeah, I did shut down.
That's the subconscious part. And how does that work? We need to understand that these pieces of our mind body system are not separate. They all work together. Your nervous system, your amygdala, your hippocampus. Your hippocampus is your emotional, it's like your emotional server for your computer and your system. If you were hit and you remember the fear, your mind stores that and it goes, hey, let's remember that for the future, because that might be relevant in a similar situation for you. This is where it gets a little tricky. But if something was done to you repetitively, especially by your parents or caregivers, it becomes familiar to your mind. It becomes familiar to your subconscious mind. And when it's familiar, it's, here's the word, safe.
Yeah. And then
if it's safe, right? Yeah. And if it's, yeah, exactly. If it's safe to the subconscious, it will continue to attract that and even perpetuate that the belief that children can only learn or be disciplined through some kind of punishment, because that's what your brain knows. That's what your body knows. It's all connected. So we can justify, and people out there will justify, yeah, I hit my kid and it teaches them a lesson. It stops the negative behavior. Yeah, it stops the negative behavior right now because something's happening to their brain cells and to their nervous system. That's going to store that and remember that. And you had this memory that came up, memory recall from your subconscious in a certain instance. That's going to happen to them at some point in their life. And it's probably going to be when they're looking at their own child later down the road.
Now, this raises another curious question. So I've known people in my life. There's one particular young girl that I can remember that was a part of my life for a little bit, not in a relationship, just and she battled with cutting herself. And I know she was abused by her father. And so I'm wondering if, as you were saying, the safety thing, how it eventually sinks in and it began, and then it perpetuates. I was thinking, oh, so you're telling me that creates a person that would harm themselves?
It can.
Interesting.
It can, because, but cutting is different. There's a lot to that. There's a lot of layers to that. When a child is feeling like they can't control anything because, let's say, the parent is controlling everything, or the school system, or everything outside of them, and they have this idea, this belief that everything outside of them is not within their power, not within their control. There's nothing they can control, not even their curfew, not even the choices they make, not even maybe what school they go to. There's a lot of stress for a child that happens. You don't see that stress. Again, it's under the iceberg. Okay. But one thing they can control, if they cut, then it heals.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, it's interesting. I self-harmed for many years, actually, interestingly. After that, I actually became a very rebellious teenager. And, my dad would say, like, I had a strict European father. They migrated from Turkey in 1970. I was born in Sydney. And I have Greek, Turkish, Ukrainian background, if you're wondering about the heritage. And, after I went through the perfectionism stage, I became dux of my primary school and I was being a total people pleaser as a child. And then I just wanted to belong and fit in. And I just befriended some really off the rails kids. And I found some sense of belonging with all these misfits, and so just went off the rails. And Dad would say, you're not allowed to pierce your ears, so I pierced it 5 times either side. I then pierced in here myself. I pierced in the middle here. I had a little ring that I used to wear in the middle, and that was, I went to a show and saw these bulls being pulled around by the nose, and I just felt really bad for these bulls. And then I ended up actually just piercing it myself in my nose, and just, so that was self-harm. And then I got into drugs and alcohol, drinking a lot, smoking a lot. I was smoking like a trooper, like just really, like I did not want to be here for a long time. I mean, thank God I've come out the other side of that. Thank God now I've done a lot of personal development work, and I've got a conscious awareness now of all these things. But at the time, as a teenager, I was completely off the rails. And I'm happy to report now, my parents and I, we have an extraordinary relationship. We're very close now, thank God. I think of people, there's many people don't talk to family members for years because someone said something they didn't like or whatever. So my question to you, Ashley, is, okay, so if hitting people maybe is not such a good solution here, not hitting people's not, it's maybe breeding violence with violence. So what is a way that we can, we can do some subconscious parenting, I guess, and have some, healthy, well-functioning children in the community who are not going to be completely off the rails and lose the plot, as a lot of kids tend to do. What's the solution?
The solution is for parents and for children both to get the support that they need. But the fact is that, are parents willing to step into that arena? Because when you step into that arena, you do have to be willing to take a look at yourself. And when you're taking a look at yourself, it's not always savory or sweet. And it asks of you to look at parts of you that you might not want to look at, you might not want to admit, because again, most of us were conditioned to not talk about our flaws. So it can be really scary for some parents to reach for that support. There's still stigma around that. Coaching, I think, is a little bit different than mental health therapy. And the reason why is, as a coach, I can relate to you. I can actually tell you my story, where in therapy, you're barred from doing some of that disclosure, right? I can tell you what I've been through. I can tell you what I've gone through. I can tell you what I've done differently that's impacting how my children behave. And why is that happening? Why is it happening to the parents I coach, and what's happening to their children? I can share that information. So parents need to get that support. First, they need to understand if they need that support, if they want that support. Want, okay? And then willing to do the work to step into that arena and take a good hard look at these different aspects of who you are, what happened to you, and how it impacts your parenting today. That's subconscious parenting, because we don't know what's going on in the subconscious until someone brings it to our conscious awareness, like I illustrated earlier with that mother. You might not know how a particular way of talking to your child impacts them. And because I come with the education in the background, I can help shed some light on that. But I haven't found that doing it alone or trying to figure it out alone works. You could read as many parenting books out there and spend thousands of hours and dollars buying books and trying to figure it out on your own. And this is not to put books down. I read a lot of books and they're very helpful. But you also need that container, that system, that support system to help you work it through, to help you process it through. So in terms of how are we going to raise children who become resilient, healthy citizens doing really amazing things out there in the world, it's going to have to start with ourselves as the parents who are raising them. And are those parents willing to say, yes, I'm ready to look at this and shift it and transform it so that I can then be there and present and show up for that child so that they don't reach for the drug, so that they don't go for that gang, they don't step into that arena that gets them into more trouble, so that I can be their rock. But let me first find out how to be there for myself and be that rock and figure things out here while I'm being there for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so do the work. And often we are so close to what we do that we don't realize that that's where working with someone else to actually help you see what's going on with your subconscious with these behaviors.
Yeah, subconscious is below our awareness. You really need someone to help point it out. And it's never, the way I coach people is never, it's never about judgment, because you didn't program your subconscious mind yourself, right? It was conditioning. It was how you were raised. It was things that were said to you. It was things that you experienced as a child that your subconscious mind, made some conclusions about. So it's nobody's fault. And there's no judgment in that. But once you know there's support, and once you know you have agency and choice whether or not you step in to that arena, then it's your responsibility. Okay, I know there's these things impacting me and my family. How am I going to step into that arena? What steps am I going to take? What am I going to do? How am I going to show up? That's choice. That's agency. And I want everyone to know who's listening that you have that agency to make that choice. Right?
Yeah. So work with an expert is great. And what about some sort of tangible sort of tips maybe in the meantime while people are waiting to work with an expert? What are some things maybe that people can do now to become a better parent?
Well, notice. Self-awareness. That's a big thing. It's hard to be self-aware if you weren't taught what self-awareness is. But self-awareness is noticing what you say. How do you respond to your children in various situations, right? Notice your triggers. That's a big one. Triggers are rooted in the past. Triggers are always rooted in the past because it won't trigger you otherwise, because it doesn't have a reference point. If it triggers you, it's something referencing that your mind, your subconscious mind, and your hippocampus and all the memory systems are going, hey, pay attention to this. This is something that's you don't like or is not going to be good for you or is a threat, right? And it could be your child screaming at you. That is a threat because your parents screamed at you a lot when you were little. But your mind, your conscious mind's unaware of that, right? So notice your triggers. I'm getting really angry with my child right now because they're screaming at me, so I want to scream back. When you were a child, you probably weren't able to scream back. You probably get the cane. Okay. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to joke about that. But you probably had some kind of repercussion if you screamed back. Now you're an adult. There's this person screaming at you. You can scream back, especially because they're smaller than you and younger than you. So notice your triggers. Okay. And once you notice them, write them down. Write them down. I was really upset when she screamed at me. I screamed back at her when she yelled, "I hate you." Whatever your triggers are, write them down. And then ask the question, where does this come from? Where is this trigger rooted? What happened that makes this a trigger? Because, Ken, you could say you hate me right now. I'm like, I don't care. I'm out of here. Right? I'm not going to be triggered by you because you and I don't have a history. I don't have a past with you, and I don't have a past connected to somebody saying I hate you to me. I've never really heard I hate you said to me. So it doesn't trigger me. Right? But if another child who grows up to be a parent has that trigger, they had somebody say a lot of mean things to them. Maybe they were bullied really badly as a teen. And now they have this kid who feels like a bully, who's saying these hurtful things. They're triggered, but they don't understand why they're so triggered, right? I don't know if that's making sense, but all of our triggers are going to be rooted differently and rooted in the past. We need to notice what they are and then ask, where is it coming from? Where does this come from? Why do I have such a strong reaction to this particular thing that my child is doing?
That does make a lot of sense. And actually, that's actually really helpful. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of people listening to this here, for sure. Now, I am curious because I know you started kind of talking on it, and you said something that I don't know why, but it was interesting to me. And then the conversation went, whoo. So I want to kind of come back to that just because I was just like, that's very intriguing. I've never heard that before. And it's when I was talking about the girl, I'm pretty sure she would never watch this. So I'll pretty much, her name was Kira. And she used to cut herself and do self-harm. And you said the phrase that it's because she knows she's going to heal from it. I'd like you to talk more into that. What do you like?
It's not one thing. I did say that, but it's not.
Yeah, I just find it curious. Because I've never heard that before. Ever.
No, somebody said it to me, actually, another professional. And I was like, wow, that really is very interesting. And it's not conscious. Nobody decides, okay, I'm going to cut myself because I'm going to heal myself. Nobody consciously decides to do that. It's subconscious. There's an aspect, there's hormones that when you cut yourself, there's a little bit of cortisol or adrenaline or some stuff that gets released, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when it's healing over, there's different hormones that are going to be released. there's inflammation, there's different stuff that's going to happen on that cut physically, like biologically and in your physiology, different stuff's going to happen. So in terms of this idea that if I cut myself, that the child is not unaware of, by the way, this is all subconscious, it can heal. It can heal because it will heal. And if a child is ever feeling like they are powerless in various aspects of their life, they're sort of a victim of their life, this can feel, although it releases that cortisol in the beginning, it starts to heal. It shifts what's happening in the brain and what neurochemicals are being released at that point.
Fascinating.
And it's something that they have control over, right? Because often people who self-harm, they feel, quite miserable. I would say I felt very low self-worth when I was self-harming. And it was something that I could control, is how I treated my own body.
I went through anorexia and bulimia, which led to depression. I could control what I was eating, and I could control how much I was restricting, and I could control how I purged and when I purged.
Yeah.
And that gave me, if my life felt like there was nothing that I was able to do well enough, good enough, all these pieces that we've been talking about, and I lived in a very critical family system, and there was no emotional availability, there was no talking about things, there was no self-expression that was allowed in a free, safe way. What could I have possibly? School system controlled what kind of homework I did. I didn't get to choose my teachers. I didn't get to choose even my extracurriculars or how I got there. So think about, as a child, there's not that much that a child can often feel like they have control of in a very adult world. And that is stressful if parents don't realize that. If they don't realize, hey, my child needs autonomy, they need choice, they need freedom, but we need to do that with limits and boundaries and safety. And how do we do that? That's what I teach and coach parents on. Then we're going to feel like, hey, this might be the only thing I can control. This eating and hiding food and restricting food and throwing up food, which I went through, that's the only thing I can control right now. I don't know what else I have power over right now in my life.
That's fascinating. Even that stuff. Wow.
Yeah, so it's just getting conscious. So now that you know that, Ken, and others watching this or listening to this, right? Now that we know this, we might be more conscious of, okay, what is it that I might do to myself or say to myself, even now as adults, that might not be serving me right now? What could I be saying or doing that's not serving me right now? And what could I be saying or doing that is serving me right now, right? And as I say, hurt people. When I got hurt people, that really hit home for me. And healed people heal people too, right? And I'm sure it's an ongoing journey for you too, Ashley. So even though you work in this field, right? I mean, I'm sure there'd be things that would still pop up for you, but at least now you've got that awareness. You go, okay, oh, there it is, and you can grab it quickly. You can notice it, and then you go, okay, let's transform this.
Yes, right? It's practice. Lots and lots and lots of practice.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. So even the eating disorders is pretty much the same thing, because I've known a couple people with eating disorders as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I just never made those connections. I
want to put the caveat. It's not one thing. It's not just one thing that can
create,
it's cutting or any kind of addiction. There's so many pieces that layer on, right? If a person's cutting, they're creating trauma, but they're responding to trauma. Okay, they're responding to trauma by creating trauma, but this is the one they can control, right? Yeah. And there's all those other aspects. What kind of impact does trauma have on you neurobiologically? Like, what does it do to your brain? What does it do to your nervous system? So there's all these other layers on top of what I just said about control, and the fact that there's only these certain aspects that some children and some people even feel they can control. That create that. So I just want to put that caveat there, that there are other layers too.
Yeah, exactly. And, half the thing here really is just get conscious where you've been unconscious. And if you don't know what you're doing and you're not aware, then see someone like Ashley and get some help, get a session. And thank you for those free resources there, and for you've got the affordable course here for parents. We've popped in there already. We do need to wrap up the show shortly. So any final words on this before we share your quote of the day, your favorite quote? Ashley.
Well, we went deep and I got real passionate. So thank you for letting me do that.
You're welcome. I told you this is a free platform. Say what you want. Be your person. Yes.
It was almost like you got triggered there for a minute, Ashley, but we won't call it a trigger there, but I could see there was definitely some heated debate.
Passion. Definitely. No, I would definitely say there was a trigger. It was not massive, but I will admit that there was a trigger because because of the science that's out there in terms of what shows up when you hit children.
Yeah.
You hit children, what happens long term. So that was definitely one.
I mean, there's certainly times I feel like hitting some of these youth, or if I see someone being nasty to animals, I'll tell you what, there's a big part of me wants to just go hit that person if they're hitting an animal. You know what I mean? Like I just really, I don't know that I'd actually do it, but there's a big urge. I have a big urge to do something about it, right? It's just not okay. Animal cruelty is not okay. And children, of course, children are helpless as well. Often, they're the I guess the weaker beings physically. They're babies. We've got to really definitely do a lot more nurturing. And the thing is, the people that are harmful to animals, that they then go on usually and they're harmful to humans as well. And so I think we need to at some point say, look, this is not okay. Otherwise, it will go on and can escalate into other things. However, how you do that, right? How you do that and to do that in a loving way. I mean, oh my gosh, just send them love. I say send them love, but sending them love doesn't always work.
You got to find the right way, and often it's going to feel like an experiment. I say that to a lot of parents. You're going to have to experiment to figure out what works for your unique child. And when one way doesn't work, we try a different way. But what are those ways? A lot of parents don't know an alternative. They actually don't know an alternative. So we got to find out what those are.
So getting back to the final thoughts for you.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you for letting me get real passionate and bold. That was fun. My favorite quotes, I have two. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. It's a reflection of what I do. And when I heard that, it was Les Brown who said that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's why this is so effective. This is why I need a coach. This is why I need that support system, because I can't see the picture clearly, at least when I'm in the frame. The other quote I like is, life is a balance of holding on and letting go.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Very cool. And we've shared two of your links there, of course. People can check that out. Also, your email address, so people can reach out to you. We'll pop that one in here. Okay, so the email address, could you just read that out for those on the audio, please?
It's Ashley, ASHLEY, at ashleyangelinekumar.net. So ASHLEYANJLIENKUMAR.net. So Ashley at ashleyangelinekumar.net.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ashley. Wow, what an interesting conversation this has been today. My mum always said, wait till you have kids, then you'll know what we've gone through. Wait till you have kids. And look, here I am at 50 and I haven't had kids. So I think there was a big part of me there going, I'm not going to have kids if they end up like me.
Wow.
I think subconsciously that's what was going on, right? I think it was like, as much as I wanted kids, there was a part of me that wanted kids, right? Like my body wanted kids, but my mind was like, oh no, I'm out of here. I love my freedom. I value my freedom. I don't want to be held down by kids for the next 20 years. However, there you go. And there I was on the plane and all these kids were screaming. And I thought, oh my God, how do these parents... Some of the kids were screaming on the plane. And then I saw this other kid that was so well behaved and it was so quiet. And I thought, well, those parents obviously are doing something that the other parents need to learn. Because the other, like, it's just interesting to see. And then how parents deal with screaming kids is really interesting to notice that in the supermarket.
Yeah, that's also a tough thing. It's all about emotional regulation, which I'm offering to parents. So go ahead and check out the link.
Yeah. I love that. Emotional regulation. Love it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. What do you do when your kids are screaming? So Ken, well, as we know, you don't have screaming kids, but you do sometimes have a screaming cat.
I've also got to mention here, because the comment just came through in the live chat. Vanessa says, it's not too late for you.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. You have faith in me. I think my subconscious mind has kind of cut that one off, I think somehow. I think now that I've hit 50, I thought, well, do I really want to be 70 with a 20-year-old? And I look at these teenagers, I think, oh, they're bloody brats anyway. And look at the world we're bringing them into. You know what I mean? There's always a reason for why to have a child and why not to have a child. And right now I've been coming up with a lot of reasons why not to have a child to justify why I've got to 50 and haven't had a child. And I take on rescue cats, and I still get my nurturing out with the rescue cats. So there you go. So I do get that nurturing out. But yeah, there is a part of me that, you know, I do look at babies sometimes. I think, oh, they're so beautiful. And, you know, there's a part of me that sort of wonders what that would have been like. So there is a part of me that kind of regrets that, actually, to be honest. There's a part of me regrets it. But at 50 now, yeah, you're right, Vanessa, it's not too late. However, not interested in adopting anyone else's children or any men from Africa, Kenya. I'm not interested in adopting you or your children either.
Goodness.
Contact me on Facebook, just for your information. So please
She's
stop.
had some interesting offers.
I have had some interesting offers. I have. They keep coming through. They come in on the comments now. They go, oh, I've sent you a friend request because you're so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I just want to marry me there and then. I mean, I know I'm beautiful. I can own it now. I didn't think I was beautiful for a long time, but thank you very much. Thank you. I'll own that. And I know you really mean it. And you didn't just write that in ChatGPT and send the same message to every other single person on Facebook. I do understand that as well. Anyway, I digress just slightly. But look, for those who do have children, it's extraordinary. I mean, I think, you know, the whole process of having a child, such a miracle to be able to have a child. And my brother has 4 children, so he's made up for me very nicely. And I do have beautiful nephews, and I've got 3 nephews and a niece, and they're all adorable. And, you know, and I haven't had to bring them up. It's been wonderful. Now I can appreciate them at an older age, and they've actually turned out to be pretty well-functioning kids. They're pretty good kids. So I think he's done a good job there. But really, at the end of the day, even no matter how much of a good job you do, I would say, Ashley, no matter how much you do a great job, you could still end up with a kid that's off the rails. Is that correct?
It depends on what they're exposed to. It depends on what's going on in their life. What is their environment? We are going to be a product of our environment. So it's not that, you know, just you and your parenting matter. There are other aspects of life that are going to come into play. And this is why it's really important for parents to go gently on themselves and give themselves grace. And don't expect to be perfect when you're trying to figure this whole parenting thing out. And don't expect perfection from the kids either, and have grace for both of yourself and your children. There's other things that come into play. But at the end of the day, the parent gets to say, hey, did I step into that arena or not?
Yeah, it would definitely help if the parent was well aware and conscious, and, you know, did conscious parenting as opposed to subconscious parenting. That would definitely help the situation. And then, you know, there's people that deal with autistic kids and all sorts of, you know, things that can be very challenging as well. So I think, you know, have grace on yourself and be kind to yourself, be kind to others as much as possible. And Ken, over to you, my friend. Ken, how can people connect with you?
Well, you can connect with me through my link tree. And when you get to my link tree, there are going to be a few links that I'm going to highlight for you. One of the first things you'll see at the top of the list in my link tree is a link to my free, yes, I said free, masterclass, the 7 mastery keys to weight loss. If you're looking for a foundation on where to start and what to do and all that, this is an hour and 15 minutes that is packed full of great stuff in there, recently updated and all that stuff. So, and if you're also unfamiliar with what I do, I have lost 62.5 pounds and I've kept it off for 6+ years now. More importantly, this is what I teach people how to do. So anybody can lose weight. Anybody can lose 20 or 30 pounds. Anybody can go on a diet. They can do that. But what the challenge that most people face is keeping the weight off. That is exactly what I help you conquer for good, having it be sustainable without a diet. And because that's what I've done 6+ years now, I've kept it off. I don't even think about it. That's because it's part of who I am. And this is the key of what I teach you, because this is where it becomes permanent, not the physical, not necessarily what you're eating, but this up here, when you transform psychologically and mentally in your journey, that's when it's going to become permanent. So I'll get off that bandwagon now. So my masterclass is in there. Then the second link that you'll see in there is a link to book an appointment with me. Look, it's free to book an appointment with me. Let me get a chance to get to know you, network with you, whatever that means, and even possibly work with you. Just give me that chance. I'd love just to get to know you better and vice versa. Lastly, you're going to find a link to connect with me on Facebook, and just friend request me, and I'll accept your request back. And then actually I lied. There's a fourth one. There's a link to my website on there as well. There's other links on there, but those are the four most main. My link tree for those of you listening by audio is linktr.ee/FatFighterKen.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ken. And what's your quote you'd like to share today?
Yeah, I'm going with my classic today. So treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. That is by Donald J. Trump.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ken. And for those who want to connect with me, you can check out my YouTube channel, Aldwyn Altuney Media Queen TV. You'll find over 1,200 videos on there, some amazing interviews, inspiring interviews. You'll see some of the Media Queen TV episodes. You'll see Media Mavens show, which I do with Kirsten Linartz from Germany. And you'll see a whole lot of our Total Truth Show episodes on there as well. So do check out the YouTube channel. Also, we have the Global Good News Challenge that happens every month. This is a way that you can practice sharing gratitude and good news. Every single month, we've got a 5-day challenge for May, which you can start anytime within May. And all the details are pinned at the top of the Global Good News Challenge Facebook page, which you'll find in my link tree /Aldwyn there. And also I'll be coming out with some more events soon as well. So I recommend follow me in Eventbrite to keep updated on our events. We've got free resources there. We help you be seen, heard, and known through mass media exposure. So if you feel like you're the world's best kept secret right now, then we can help get you out there to be seen, heard, and known. So if you want extra support, you can also book a call on my calendar link or send me a PM. Those calendar links, the times go pretty quick. So if you can't see an available time, then just reach out to me and we'll make it happen. And just go to linktree /Aldwyn. There's linktr.ee/Aldwyn, ALDWYN. And I've got some quotes about parenting today. I've done a quick bit of Googling here and found some cool stuff. So the first one is, parents are the ultimate role models for children. Every word, movement, and action has an effect. No other person or outside force has a greater influence on a child than the parent. And here is another one by Anne Landers. It is not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings. A little doting on our kids is fine, but don't forget to teach them how to take care of themselves along the way, such as brush their own teeth. I think it's a very healthy practice to brush your own teeth, children, okay, and for parents to allow the children to brush their teeth imperfectly at first, because everything is hard until it becomes easy. Right. And you know, everything is perfect in its imperfections as well. So just notice if you're being a perfectionist, our parents and fellow beings out there, I know I've certainly had a bit of that trait myself. So I notice it and go, okay, just getting it done is better than getting it perfect and undone. So just get it done, get it out there, take action, and the rest will take place. And of course, reach out to Ashley if you'd like some extra help to see where you might be having some limiting behaviors in your conscious world, and to tap into that unconscious to be the best parent that you can with subconscious parenting. Thank you so much for coming on our show, Ashley. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Any final words before we wrap up the live stream? And thank you to all those who've joined us as well. Final words, Ashley. Okay.
Just thank you so much for having a very candid and bold discussion.
Thank you, Ashley. It was fantastic.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And Ken, any final words from you?
No final words.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for all those who've joined us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X. Sending you much love. Please let us know what you thought of the show. What are your comments? What are your ideas around some of the things we've been talking about? Love to hear from you. And if you've got any questions for us, then tag us in the comments and we can come back to your questions later as well. And make sure you put a like or a love on this and share the love, because maybe there's another parent out there right now or another human being out there that really needs to see this episode. So if that's the case, then share the love. And we'll see you again back on Total Truth Show for episode 65 for our next one. And stay tuned. We've got some awesome guests coming up. Thank you so much. And
Ashley, it's been a pleasure having you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been great. Thank you so much. Bye for now, everyone.